All right, my friends, please, please do not make this huge mistake that I made on a canoe camping trip up in Northern Ontario this past summer. Here's what happened. I started my drive to the lake from my house, kind of like, I left in enough time. I was sure that I was going to have plenty of time when I got there. And as it turned out, up in the Temagami area, the access roads to my put-in point were like lumber roads, and they had virtually no signage. At least it was poor. And so I missed my turnoff. And in fact, by the time I found it, I wasn't even sure how I found it. I mean, it's by the grace of God, because there was nothing to tell me I was on the right track. Even using a GPS wasn't helpful. So I get there about an hour late to my put-in point. And then the next thing that happened was that I kind of had a healthy dose of confidence in my map reading skills and all the other skills that I have, having done this for 40 years, right? So I put my canoe in the water, I get ready to launch, but just before I do, I kind of glance at my map and I'm thinking, okay, so here I am. This is a big sort of a beachy bay that I was launching from. There was no exact launch point. That's kind of one of the first things. There's no exact launch point on my map. The map didn't show the trail that I walked to the beach from. It just had a big, long, sandy beach. In fact, the bay that I was starting off from was called Sandy Inlet, and it was called that because this sandy beach, was about pretty close to a mile long. Like, it really was long. And so I didn't know 100% where I was on that beach. I just made an educated assumption. I thought I was right. So I kind of look at my map. I'm like, okay, I'm kind of here, and okay, let's see, where am I here now? I've got to make it to the other side of this bay over here because that's where my portage is. And so I look out in the water, and I'm like, okay, that's that bay there, right? And because I see there's a point of land on the one side, and there's a closer one over here, there's a point of land. And on my map, I see there's these 2 points of land, here, and right in the middle over there is my portage. And, oh look, there's a little stream coming into the bay. So I'll make sure that I see a stream, once I launch, and so I'll know I'm in the right place. So I get in my canoe, I start paddling, and sure enough, I pass this outlet, or this point of land here. I'm like, okay, past that. And then I look way over to one side, and I see a low, marshy kind of area, which to me says, hey, that's the stream coming into the lake. So I'm like, okay, I got this. This is all good. So just a little to the left of that on my map, I'm looking at, there is the portage. So I get close to where I think the portage is. I don't see any tape or sign or anything like that for a portage, but again, pretty confident with how I'm doing things. So I get out, and I kind of looked from the boat to see if there's a trail, and yeah, there's a bit of a trail there. It's kind of rocky, but I get out of the canoe, throw my 100-liter pack on my back, grab my canoe, flip it on top of me, get ready to start walking down the rocky pathway trail into the forest, only to realize it's not a trail. It was just a little opening with some rocks. So now I'm starting to kind of worry a little bit, because I thought, well, wait a minute, how am I going to find the real place if I already screwed up and I thought I was doing the right thing? Well, what did I do wrong on my map? I mean, I'm reading it as well as I can. And the sun is getting closer to the horizon because I arrived later than I wanted to, and so and my camp spot is on the other side of the portage. So I'm a little bit worried, but I'm not too freaked out at this point. So I get back in the canoe, but I'm just sort of floating there in the water, going, well, wait a second. So did I miss it? Is the portage like back in this bay more, or oh look, there's another bay? I didn't think the map was, I wasn't there. Yeah, like it's way over there. So now I'm confused. I'm like, well, maybe I could try the next bay, but if I'm wrong and I got to come all the way back here, I'm really screwed because the light's going to be all gone and I have no place to camp. So I made the decision. I'm like, okay, I got to do this. And so I did eventually get to the other bay. And long story short, I did find my portage. It was in the next bay. The next bay looked very similar to the previous bay. It also had a stream coming into it. So it was very deceptive. So I get out of my canoe, I start the process over again. I throw on my 100-liter pack and my canoe, and I start getting ready for this portage. Now the portage is 1 kilometer long, but I have to make 2 trips, so that's going to be 3 kilometers. So again, the sun's getting lower, and I know that I don't have even really moments to spare. So I get ready. I start walking out, and just before I really get onto the trail, I glance down. My map is kind of hanging off of one of the thwarts of my canoe. I kind of glance over at it, and I realize the trail is exactly, like directly beside a marking or a label on my map that says Mount Napoleon. So it's always bad news when your portage starts upward beside anything called Mount whatever, right? So it was a steep, steep climb. And of course, the stress is building up a little bit in me because I'm not sure if I'm going to make it in time to where I need to go before sunset or before it gets dark. And so I start, kind of getting into adrenaline mode, and I start almost jogging up this slope. Now, that in and of itself wouldn't be so horrible if it was maybe like solid, dry bedrock, or maybe, dry dirt with lots of roots or something like that, right? But no, this path was made of rocks, but the rocks were like the size of pebbles, maybe as big as a golf ball, but they were all on kind of loose, sandy, dusty kind of soil. And then there's me, who wants to make it really quickly. I've got the stress levels turned up a bit, and I'm starting to hurry. Well, you kind of know where this is going, right? I get about 3/4 of the way up, and for the first time in my life ever on a canoe trip, I wiped out. I tripped. I fell because I was just in too much of a hurry, and my toe hit one of the rocks instead of lifting it over the rock, because the slope was so steep. So anyway, it was just quick, like carelessness and just moving too quickly. So I topple over onto the ground. My canoe bounces about 15 feet away, scrapes across some rocks, hits a tree. I'm on the ground sideways with this really heavy pack on my back. I know I have to get out of that situation. So I do. I struggle up, barely get standing on this steep slope where I'm kind of slipping already, and now I have to grab a canoe and chuck it onto my shoulders. So anyways, through that whole process, I get that done. I'm now on my way to the other side of the portage, and the sun's not getting any higher. So I am now walking with some pep in my step, and I found myself even jogging in along some of the stretches. But it was a tough portage. It wasn't just a nice dirt path in the woods. So anyways, I on my way back, I actually ran. It was like a full jog the entire way, and by the time I got finished the whole thing, because of the terrain and all that kind of stuff, the sun was now way past the horizon. It was pretty much last light. I could see the glow of the sky behind some of the evergreens in the distance, but otherwise there's bats in the air, and I can see the full moon, and there's stars. So now my problems still aren't over, because now I'm thinking, okay, well, I see my campsite on the map, but now I don't know if I'm reading this map right. Maybe I've got that screwed up and it's like way farther. And even if I do find it, it's Crown land. And in Ontario, if you know anything about camping on Crown land is free, which is great. There's a lot of it, and there are a lot of campsites, which is also a wonderful thing. The problem is that you can't book any campsite. It's not... nobody can reserve anything in advance. It's basically first come, first serve. So I'm thinking, oh man, what if it's occupied and it's late summer? It's still a very popular time to go, and I'm thinking, oh, there's probably a good chance that it is a really common, a popular area to paddle. So I'm like, oh man, now what? Well, I guess the story could be worse, because I did find the camp spot and it was not occupied. So that's all a good thing. So I was able to proceed and set up camp, but really I'm actually finished. I'm just finishing my hammock setup, and there is really no light from the daytime anymore. It's all just moonlight and starlight, and it was a really close call. So what was the problem exactly, and how can we deal with it? Well, I'll tell you right now, the problem basically was the fact that I was a little bit overconfident in my abilities in just about everything, but specifically in reading my map. Now, this is where it gets a little bit dicey, because you see over my shoulder, you see a map there, and that is a map of Killarney Provincial Park in central Ontario. And it's a map that you would get at an outfitter. It is meant for navigation on the water. However, I also have right here a map from another canoe area park called Kawartha Highlands Provincial Park. It's also here in Ontario. The map behind me is at a scale of 1 to 50,000. And the one from Kawartha Highlands I just showed you, also meant for navigation, it's what you would get at an outfitter, is at a scale of 1 to 40,000. I also have maps meant for paddling that are at a scale of 1 to 25,000. There are other maps that I have of the wilderness that I could use for paddling, 1 to 20,000. There's also 1 to 75,000, and I have one at 1 to 100,000. So the scales aren't even the same. So what? What does that mean? Well, it means a lot because, well, actually, I forgot to show you this. I should show you this. In this is, of course, a map case that you would stick in front of you on the thwart in front of you so you can have a nice view of your map. Well, when I put maps in this thing, I really want to have the maximum size. I want to fill up all the edges. This one's not exactly there, but anyway, that's another story. So I usually make the map as big as I can. So sometimes I will take a map from an outfitter like this and just kind of fold it and put my area in the map case. But most of the time what I do is I just scan the area that I need into my computer, my printer actually, and then I just enlarge it to whatever size I can fit nicely in my map case. Because all I need is my little area, right? You don't need the entire region or the entire park. You just need your route. So I enlarge that to fit nicely in the waterproof case. Well, what's the scale of that? So I don't know. It's no scale that I know. I just enlarge it so that it looks good, right? So you got all these different scales out there, and that can throw a loop into everything. It did for me. I couldn't figure out exactly, how far I could paddle, like in 1 inch on the map. Would that take me half an hour or an hour to paddle an inch? Or maybe just 20 minutes? That's essentially why I got all messed up. So, what can you do to prevent the situation from happening in the future? There's a bunch of things. Now, if you have been paddling for a long time, what I'm saying to you now, you're probably just saying, well, this is nothing new, this is nothing revolutionary. I mean, duh, the guy's just dumb. Maybe. But there are a bunch of people, I'm sure of it, watching that are fairly new to the game of paddling, of wilderness canoe tripping. It's a super, super fast growing activity, one of the fastest in the world in the outdoor space. And so there's always new people watching, I'm sure. And so you guys got to know this, in addition to all the other 1,000 things that you have to know before you start going out on your own wilderness canoe trips. This is one of them, how to read your map properly. Now, let me just step back here and say that if you have a GPS that can show you, real time where you are exactly on the lake that you're on, that could have helped the situation. But it's not 100% because I have one, but I didn't turn it on. And the reason is that I just don't like it. It's the screen is pretty small and it's not very much detail. And if you zoom out so you can see the whole lake, then you can't really tell where you are, because the little indicator of, who you are is probably a little triangle. It'll take up half the lake. So you got to zoom in to see with any precision where you are, but then you can't see the bigger picture. You can't see the bigger part of the lake. So that's why I like using a map. And by the way, if I told you right now that all I use is electronic navigation, and I don't have a compass or a map, you would say, well, you're just dumb. That's just foolish. You'd probably give me, some critical comments. Everybody who does anything in the outdoors should know enough to have a physical copy of a map and a compass. All right? Don't rely 100% on electronics. So all I was doing was using my map, which is nice because it's big, it's colorful, and I can see my entire route in front of me. And it's just really convenient. That's all I ever use. I almost never use electronic navigation. So again, it got me messed up. So what can you do? What could I have done? If I had known now, or if I had known then what I know now, I would have saved myself some emotional trauma along the way, and I would have saved myself some physical problems that I now have with my back, which I didn't notice at the time, but it was something I did to it that has lasted till now. I should probably see a chiropractor, but I guess I'm too cheap. But anyways, what could you have done to prevent this? Well, the first thing is way back. Let's go way, way back to the planning stage. First thing I would do is always plan such that depending on when you're arriving at your launch point, I would plan it such that my camp spot, my first camp spot, is not far from there. Now, if you're staying overnight in your car before you launch in the morning, that's maybe another story, because you're going to have, the whole day to be able to get to wherever you're going. That's fine. But in my case, that's not how I was going to do it. So I wanted to plan so that my first campsite was close to my launch point. And I did that, just not quite enough. So that's the first thing, if you're wondering how you can prevent this issue, is just do that. Have it relatively close. I can't tell you an exact distance or time, anything from half an hour to maybe a couple hours, depending on when you're launching, what time of the day. So that's number one. Number two, leave your house or wherever you're driving from in giving yourself more time than you think you need, right? That's always a good idea, right? Again, basic, but in my case, I had like a bunch of elements come together to form the perfect storm. So I left early enough, I thought, but then I got lost along the way because there was no signage on these logging roads, and so I arrived late. And then when I launched, I didn't have my bearings with my map. I thought I did, but I hadn't used this exact map, and I hadn't been on this exact route. And this was a case where I had printed a map and then enlarged it, so that kind of threw me off as well. So what's the next thing I could have done? Well, when you arrive at your put-in point, you can do a couple of things. You can, if you have time and it's, if you have some ability to practice some leisure activity, you could actually go and do like a water test and go, okay, so here I am. There is a bay over there. I see a little rocky island over there. And oh, look, there's the rocky island on my map. And I'm going to see how long it takes me to paddle from here to there. If it's, I don't know, maybe if it's a couple hundred yards or something, that's an easy thing to do before you even start out. But in my case, what made more sense is to just load up the canoe and carefully navigate along the shore and make sure that you have your bearings on your map to know exactly how far you're going on your map and how long it's taking you in real time. Does 1 inch get you, or take you 20 minutes? Or does 20 minutes get you 2 inches? You know what I'm saying, right? So I also did that. But again, I told you I had the perfect storm that came together to cause my issues because there were multiple bays that looked exactly the same on the map. There were also multiple bays, but for some reason it just didn't jive in my head that it wasn't the first bay that I was on, but I didn't know there might have been a first bay because it was kind of hard to see exactly what the shoreline looked like when you're at the level of the shoreline. So what I thought was on the map, the second bay, was actually the first bay, and I had to go to the second bay. So again, my own fault, absolutely. There's nobody to blame but myself on this one. But again, it can mess you up. And if you're new to this game, you got to be really, really careful. Again, learn how to navigate properly and have your GPS handy if you have one. All right, guys, I hope that you have gleaned something from this video. I love doing them. I hope that you've gotten some value out of it. If you have, please do give me your like and subscribe. And check out our Instagram. We got the handle down below there. We post sometimes every day. Sometimes we go a week or two without posting just because life gets in the way. And speaking of that, life getting in the way, the reason is because I got to make money doing something else, and then I do these videos, which I love, and I love to glean glean information, but also present what I've learned over the years to you guys. But the thing is, I don't have any money doing it. Now, you guys have heard me say this before probably, that I don't make any money on YouTube. As of the making of this video, I mean, maybe things change by the time you're watching this, but when I made this video, when I'm talking to you right now, I make $0 per month, every month, from YouTube. I don't know, maybe I'm making some money, but I haven't reached the minimum threshold because nobody's paid me anything. yet, so who knows, maybe it'll come, but it won't be a lot of money. So the reason I tell you that is simply because I want your sympathy. No, I'm just kidding. I'm telling you this because down below, if you look, there's a little button that says join, and we have a membership opportunity for you here on Rugged Outdoors Guide. It's just my wife and myself, and we're trying to do our thing here, and we don't make any money from it, but it's really helpful to have a few dollars a month to either get some product or gear that we need to either review or to use in a particular video, and then we like to be able to give it away to you guys in some sort of a, I don't know, whatever it is, some sort of giveaway, raffle, whatever. Or just even as motivation to keep doing what we're doing, because I don't even know if you guys care if nobody's giving me any feedback. So please do. Oh, by the way, speaking of feedback, you got to listen to this. Got to look right in the camera up close. You guys can give me any type of feedback you want. Now, a lot of you guys are very gracious and you're like, hey, thanks for that, appreciate that, and you give me your stories and whatever. And by the way, please do, regarding this particular situation, let me know. Have you ever lost your way? Have you ever been on the water late at night not knowing where you're going to stay? Have you ever screwed up reading your map? Give me your thoughts and your adventures and your mishaps, and I'm sure other people will comment on your comments. But even if you have just negative things to say, like you're just stupid and you're an idiot, whatever, you can leave your comments. Make them civil, because if they're not, if there's, if you're really nasty and swearing at me, well, they're just going right into the trash. But if they're somewhat civil, I will either answer you in a diplomatic way or a helpful way that will be beneficial. But if I can't, I'll just post your comment anyway, and you can see what other people say as they respond to your comment, right? So in any case, leave me your comments, whatever they are, positive or negative. But the membership opportunity that we have here is just for you guys to exercise, your kindness muscle, I guess, to help us out. And you don't get a lot. Like if you click that button down there, it says join. It doesn't mean you're joining. It just opens up a portal where you can see I've got a welcome video there. Thank you for considering. And then it shows you what you get. You get some things. You get some little, electronic things for your chat, little icons and stuff like that. It's kind of a standard thing that YouTube offers. And the idea is that we're actually, I guess, fundraising for the channel. It's not that we're giving you a lot for any money you're giving us, right? It wouldn't work, right? I need to actually make some sort of money, even if it's probably, I'm looking at either single digits or, double digits cumulatively a month. We're not talking about a lot of money. I don't know if I'm going to make any at all. But I'm just throwing it out there for you guys. If you are interested, check out what you get, and you have my undying appreciation if you consider membership with Rugged Outdoors Guide. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me for this edition of Rugged Outdoors Guide, and I do hope you will join us next time. Should be less than a week from now. All right, guys, you know what I'm going to say at this point, right? Get out there, enjoy God's creation, and keep on looking up.